Hey, English learners, welcome back to English Power Shift podcast, your calm little corner of the internet where we learned English naturally through real conversations and real life.
Yeah, no complicated grammar lessons today, no tests, no pressure. Just a relaxed conversation that helps you improve your English while feeling like you're spending time with friends.
I'm Emma,
And I'm Adam.
and wherever you're listening from right now, we're really happy you're here. Maybe you're drinking your morning coffee before work, maybe you're walking home after a long day, or maybe you're curled up on the couch with your headphones, enjoying a few quiet minutes for yourself.
Honestly, that sounds pretty nice.
It does.
And no matter where you are, we want you to know something. You don't need to understand every single word in today's episode. You don't need a notebook. You don't need to pause and study. Just listen. Your brain is learning more than you think.
That's so true. Sometimes people underestimate the power of listening. They think learning only happens when they're actively studying. But every time you listen to natural English, you're training your ears. You're getting used to the rhythm of the language, the pronunciation, the little expressions that native speakers use every day.
Exactly. And over time, those expressions stop sounding strange. They start feeling familiar.
And that's actually connected to today's topic.
Oh, yes. Today's topic is something almost every English learner struggles with at some point.
How do you talk about your daily life in English without sounding boring,
Such a simple question.
but surprisingly difficult?
Because daily life feels ordinary, right? We wake up, eat breakfast, go to work or school, come home, watch something, go to sleep. Nothing dramatic.
Exactly. And then somebody asks, "How was your day?" And suddenly your mind goes completely blank.
It's amazing how fast that happens.
5 seconds earlier, you remembered everything that happened. Then someone asks the question, and every English word disappears.
It's like your vocabulary decides to take a day off.
Exactly. And then you end up giving the shortest answer possible. It was okay. Nothing special. Just a normal day.
And the conversation dies right there.
Which is frustrating because you actually have things to say. You just don't know how to say them naturally.
So, Emma, why do you think this is such a common problem?
Honestly, because most learners think talking about their daily life means giving a report.
A report?
Yeah, like they're standing in front of a classroom trying to explain every step of their day.
Ah, I know exactly what you mean.
They say things like, "I woke up at 7, I ate breakfast, I went to work, I came home, I watched TV."
The famous daily routine speech.
Exactly. And technically, those sentences are correct.
There's nothing wrong with the grammar.
Not at all. The problem is that real conversations aren't just lists of actions.
They're stories.
Yes.
Even tiny stories.
That's interesting.
Think about it. Imagine I ask you how your day was.
Okay.
And you answer, I went to the grocery store.
That's fine, but it's not very exciting.
Right. Now imagine you say, I went to the grocery store today and somehow I spent 20 minutes looking for pasta that was right in front of me the whole time.
That's much better.
Why?
Because now I can imagine it.
Exactly. There's a scene in my head.
And suddenly, I want to keep listening.
That's the secret. People don't connect with lists. They connect with moments.
Wow, that's actually a really important point.
When you're talking about your day, don't try to explain everything.
Nobody remembers every detail anyway.
True.
Instead, choose one small moment.
Just one?
Just one.
That sounds much easier.
It is. Maybe you saw something funny on the bus. Maybe your coffee spilled on your shirt. Maybe your dog did something ridiculous.
Dogs are very talented at doing ridiculous things.
They really are.
So instead of describing the entire day, we focus on one memorable moment.
Exactly. Let me give another example. Imagine somebody asks, "How was work today?"
Okay,
The boring answer is, "It was busy."
end of conversation.
Pretty much.
What's the better version?
Something like, "It was so busy today. At one point, I had 3 different people asking me questions at the same time, and my brain just stopped working."
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
And that's the point. Real conversations are about connection.
Not information.
Exactly.
That's such a small change, but it makes a huge difference.
It really does. And here's another thing people often forget.
What's that?
Your daily life is more interesting than you think.
I'm not sure everyone believes that.
I know. A lot of people think, my life is boring. Nobody wants to hear about it.
I've definitely felt that before.
Me too.
Especially when you compare your life to social media.
Exactly. Online, everyone seems to be traveling somewhere amazing, starting a new business, climbing a mountain, or doing something exciting every 5 minutes.
Meanwhile, you're sitting at home trying to decide what to have for dinner.
Yes.
But real life isn't made of huge moments all the time.
Not at all.
Most of life happens in small moments.
And honestly, those small moments are often the most meaningful ones.
That's true.
They are.
And they're perfect things to talk about in English.
Exactly. Because when you share those moments, you're not just practicing English.
You're sharing a piece of your life.
And that's what makes conversations feel human.
I love that.
So here's our first idea for today.
Let's hear it.
Don't describe your entire day.
Describe one moment from your day.
One small scene.
One little story.
One thing that made you laugh, think, smile, or even feel frustrated.
Because that's what people remember.
Exactly.
And honestly, that's also what makes your English sound more natural.
Much more natural.
So if someone asks you tomorrow, how was your day, don't immediately start listing activities.
Instead, pause for a second
Think about one moment.
and tell that moment like a tiny story.
Trust us, it changes everything.
And that actually brings us to our second idea. Because once you stop listing activities and start sharing moments, there's another thing that can make your English sound much more natural.
Let me guess. Feelings.
Exactly. Feelings.
That's interesting because I think a lot of learners focus only on what happened.
Right. They tell you the facts, but they forget to tell you how those facts felt.
And that's what people usually connect with.
It really is. Think about 2 different answers to the same question. Imagine I ask, "How was your weekend?"
Okay.
One person says, "I stayed home and watched movies."
Fine. Nothing wrong with that answer.
Not at all. But then another person says, "I stayed home all weekend, and honestly, it felt amazing. I was so exhausted from work that spending 2 days on the couch felt like a mini vacation."
Wow. Same weekend, completely different feeling.
Exactly. The second answer gives us something to connect to. We don't just know what happened, we know how that person experienced it.
And that's what makes conversations interesting.
Yes. Human beings connect through emotions. We remember feelings much more than facts.
That's true. I can barely remember what I ate 3 days ago, but I can remember exactly how I felt during a really good day.
Or a really stressful one.
Especially a stressful one.
Exactly.
So what kind of feeling words should learners use?
Well, most people already know the basic ones. Happy, sad, tired, angry, excited.
The classics.
And those words are useful, but sometimes they don't fully express what you're trying to say.
Like when someone asks how you're feeling and you automatically say, "I'm tired."
Yes, but maybe you're not just tired.
Maybe you're exhausted.
Exactly. Or maybe you're drained.
That's a good one.
Drained means you feel like all your energy has been used up, like a phone battery at 1%.
That's a perfect image.
Or maybe you're not simply happy
Maybe you're thrilled.
or delighted.
Those words feel much more alive.
They do, and you don't need dozens of advanced words. Even learning 1 or 2 new feeling words each week can completely change how you express yourself.
You know, this reminds me of something that happened a few years ago.
Oh, a story? I like where this is going.
I was talking to a friend who was learning English. Every time I asked how his day was, he gave exactly the same answer.
Let me guess. Good?
Every single time.
Of course.
Monday, good. Tuesday, good. Friday, good. Even when he had a terrible day, somehow it was still good.
That's actually really common.
And one day I asked him, okay, but what kind of good?
That's a great question.
And he looked at me for a second and said, I don't know.
Because nobody had ever asked him to go deeper.
Exactly. So we started exploring different feeling words together. Excited, nervous, relieved, frustrated, grateful.
Grateful is such a beautiful word.
It really is.
For anyone listening, grateful means feeling thankful for something in a sincere and meaningful way.
For example, I felt grateful when my friend helped me.
Or I'm grateful for having a quiet morning today.
Small sentence, big feeling.
And that's another thing people often forget. Your feelings don't have to be dramatic.
That's true.
You don't need a life-changing event to practice English.
You can be grateful for a good cup of coffee.
Or relieved because a difficult meeting is finally over.
Or excited because your favorite show released a new episode.
Exactly. Everyday feelings are still feelings.
And honestly, those everyday emotions are what make conversations feel real.
They do. And here's something else I want our listeners to think about.
What's that?
When you talk about your day, imagine you're not describing a schedule. Imagine you're describing an experience.
I love that distinction.
Because a schedule is just a list of things you did.
But an experience includes your emotions, your reactions, your thoughts.
Exactly.
And that's where natural English lives.
It really does.
You know, there was a period in my life when every day felt exactly the same.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat.
The famous cycle.
And I remember thinking, I have nothing interesting to talk about.
What changed?
I started paying attention to small moments, a funny conversation, a song I couldn't stop listening to, a beautiful sunset on the way home.
Those little details again.
Exactly. Once I started noticing them, I realized my days weren't boring at all. I just wasn't paying attention.
That's such an important lesson.
And honestly, I think it applies to English learning too.
Absolutely.
The more attention you give to your own experiences, the easier it becomes to talk about them.
Which means that our second idea is actually very simple.
Tell us.
Tell people what happened.
Tell them how it felt.
Because facts inform people.
But feelings connect people.
And connection is what makes conversations memorable.
That's a line worth remembering.
Facts inform, feelings connect.
I like that. You know, Emma, what we were just talking about reminds me of something I used to struggle with when I was learning another language.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and honestly, it took me a long time to realize what I was doing wrong.
What was it?
I was trying so hard to sound correct that I forgot how to sound human.
Wow, that's such a good way to put it.
Every sentence felt like a test. Every conversation felt like an exam. Before speaking, I would check the grammar in my head, then check it again, then change the sentence 3 times.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. By the time I finally opened my mouth, the conversation had already moved on.
I think a lot of learners know exactly what you're talking about.
And the funny thing is that native speakers weren't even paying attention to my grammar.
They were paying attention to the conversation.
Exactly. They wanted to know what I thought, what I felt, what happened during my day.
Not whether you used the perfect verb tense.
Right.
That's such an important realization.
It really changed the way I approached speaking.
So what happened after that?
Well, I started speaking more casually. I stopped trying to sound like a textbook.
I love that.
Instead of trying to build perfect sentences, I focused on sharing ideas.
And how did people react?
Honestly, conversations became easier. People understood me better, and most importantly, I enjoyed speaking more.
That's huge.
It is, because if you don't enjoy speaking, you're not going to do it very often.
Exactly. And that brings us perfectly to our third idea today.
The final idea.
And honestly, this might be the most powerful one of all.
I agree.
When you talk about your daily life in English, talk like you're talking to a friend, not like you're answering a teacher.
Such a simple idea.
But it changes everything.
Think about how differently we speak depending on who we're talking to.
That's true.
If a teacher asks, "What did you do today?" many learners immediately become nervous.
Their brain switches into performance mode.
Exactly.
Suddenly, they're worrying about mistakes.
They're searching for perfect grammar.
They're trying to impress someone.
And because of that, their speech becomes stiff.
That's a great word, actually. Stiff.
Yeah, stiff means not relaxed, not natural, almost like something can't move freely.
And stiff English sounds something like this. Today, I went to the supermarket. I purchased vegetables. Then I returned home.
Technically correct.
But nobody talks like that.
Exactly.
Now imagine you're talking to your best friend.
Completely different energy.
You'd probably say something like, "Oh my goodness, the supermarket was crazy today. There were people everywhere. I only needed 3 things, but somehow I stayed there for 40 minutes.
That's much more natural.
Because you're sharing an experience.
Not delivering a report.
Exactly.
I think one reason learners struggle is because they imagine every conversation as an interview.
That's so true.
They imagine somebody evaluating every word they say.
When in reality, most people are simply listening.
Most people want connection, not perfection.
That's a beautiful sentence.
And it's true.
So here's a little exercise for everyone listening.
I like exercises that don't feel like exercises.
Me too.
What should they do?
The next time you practice speaking English, imagine one person.
Just one?
Just one.
Who?
Someone who makes you feel comfortable. A good friend, a cousin, a classmate. Someone who listens without judging you.
Okay.
Then imagine you're telling that person about your day. Not a teacher, not a boss, not an examiner. Just a friend. Because the moment you do that, your voice changes.
It really does.
Your sentences become more relaxed, more natural, more personal.
And that's exactly how real conversations work.
You know what's interesting?
What?
Many learners already know enough English to have conversations.
I agree.
The problem isn't always vocabulary.
Or grammar.
Sometimes the problem is fear.
Fear of making mistakes.
Fear of sounding silly.
Fear of not being perfect.
And that fear creates a wall between you and the other person.
That's a powerful image.
But conversations aren't supposed to be walls.
They're supposed to be bridges.
Exactly.
A bridge connects people.
And nobody builds a bridge by worrying about every tiny detail.
They build it piece by piece.
Word by word. Conversation by conversation. And eventually, one day, you realize you're speaking more naturally than before.
Not because you became perfect, but because you became comfortable.
And honestly, comfortable English is often more powerful than perfect English. Okay, before we finish today's episode, let's take a moment and look back at everything we've talked about. Because honestly, none of these ideas are complicated. That's the beautiful thing. You don't need advanced grammar. You don't need thousands of vocabulary words. You don't need to sound like a professor. Most of the time, sounding natural in English comes from making a few small changes in the way you share your thoughts. And today, we talked about 3 of those changes.
Exactly. The first one was simple. Instead of trying to describe your entire day from beginning to end, focus on one moment, one little scene, one thing that happened that made you laugh, smile, think, or even feel frustrated. People remember stories much more than they remember lists. If someone asks about your day, don't feel like you need to explain every detail. Just choose one small moment and bring it to life.
Then, we talked about feelings. And honestly, I think this is where many learners can improve very quickly. So many people spend all their time talking about what happened, but they never talk about how it felt. And that's a missed opportunity because emotions are what make conversations feel human. Instead of saying, I worked all day, maybe you can say, I worked all day and felt completely exhausted afterward. Instead of saying, I stayed home, maybe you can say, I stayed home and honestly felt relieved because I finally had some time to relax. Those little additions make a huge difference.
And then we arrived at our final idea, which might be my favorite one. Talk like you're talking to a friend. Not a teacher, not an examiner, not someone who's waiting to catch your mistakes. Imagine you're talking to someone who genuinely wants to hear your story. The moment you do that, your English becomes more relaxed, more personal, and much more natural. And the funny thing is that people usually enjoy talking with you more when you're relaxed than when you're trying to sound perfect.
I completely agree. In fact, if there's one thing I hope our listeners remember after today's episode, it's this. Communication is not a performance. It's a connection. You're not standing on a stage trying to impress people. You're sharing a part of your life with another human being. And when you start thinking about conversations that way, speaking English becomes much less scary.
You know, something else came to my mind while we were talking today. I think many learners underestimate how interesting their own lives are. They look at their daily routine and think, nothing special happened today. But if you pay attention, there's almost always something worth sharing. Maybe it was a funny conversation. Maybe it was a difficult moment that taught you something. Maybe it was just a quiet morning where you finally had time to think. Those moments matter.
They really do. And sometimes the most ordinary moments become the most memorable stories. I think we've all had experiences where we sat down with a friend and ended up talking for an hour about things that seemed completely ordinary at first. A walk, a meal, a conversation, a strange thing that happened on the bus. That's real life. And real life is exactly what conversations are made of.
So before we finish, let's review a few of the words we used today. Not in a stressful way, just a relaxed little review to help them stay in your memory.
I like that. Let's start with the word vivid. Vivid means something that is clear, colorful, and easy to imagine. If someone tells a vivid story, you can almost see it happening in your mind. For example, she described her vacation in such a vivid way that I felt like I was there with her.
Next, we have the word grateful. Grateful means feeling thankful and appreciating something or someone. It doesn't have to be something huge. You can be grateful for a good friend, a quiet morning, or even a warm cup of coffee on a cold day.
Another useful word is exhausted. This is stronger than simply saying tired. If you've had a long day, worked hard, studied for hours, or dealt with a lot of stress, you might feel exhausted.
And let's not forget relieved. Relieved is what you feel when something difficult is finally over. Maybe you finished an important exam. Maybe a stressful week ended. That feeling when the pressure disappears, that's relief.
One more word I really like is natural. We used it a lot today. Natural means something that feels easy, comfortable, and genuine. And that's exactly what we're aiming for when we speak English. Not perfect English, natural English.
Now, we have a little challenge for everyone listening. Nothing difficult, just something small that can help you practice what we've talked about today.
Earlier, we asked you to think about one moment from your day. Maybe you're still thinking about it right now. Maybe it was your morning coffee. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was something funny, stressful, surprising, or meaningful.
We want you to take that moment and describe it in 1 or 2 sentences, not your entire day, just that moment.
And try to include a feeling. Maybe you felt grateful. Maybe you felt excited. Maybe you felt relieved. Maybe you felt overwhelmed. Whatever's true for you.
Then, if you'd like, write it in the comments. We genuinely enjoy reading them, and one of the best things about this community is seeing learners from different countries sharing little pieces of their lives in English.
It's honestly one of my favorite parts of making these episodes. Every comment is a reminder that there are people all around the world learning, improving, and supporting one another.
And if you're nervous about writing, that's okay too. Just create your sentence in your head. Even that small practice helps.
Absolutely. Progress doesn't always happen in big, dramatic steps. Sometimes it happens quietly. One sentence, one conversation, one episode at a time.
And if you've been listening all the way until now, you've already spent a good amount of time practicing your English today. That's something you should be proud of.
It really is. While the world was moving quickly around you, you chose to spend some time learning, growing, and investing in yourself. And that's never a waste of time.
So the next time somebody asks, "How was your day?" we hope you'll remember today's conversation.
Don't give a list.
Share a moment.
Don't focus only on facts.
Share a feeling.
And most importantly,
Talk like you're talking to a friend.
thank you so much for spending this time with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another English learner who might find it helpful.
Your support helps us continue creating these episodes, and it helps more learners discover that improving their English can actually be enjoyable.
Until next time, take care of yourself. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep believing in your progress, even when it feels slow. This is Emma.
And this is Adam. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.